Don't put leave
Thanks,
meeting. I'm always afraid I'm going to put that. Start over.
Well, we'll continue our priesthood series. So
Mhm.
major themes of the Bible. And tonight we're going to start with Moses and Aaron. And maybe we'll get as far as David.
Ooh,
We'll see.
exciting.
Otherwise, we'll do David next week. But we're going to start with, during this series, we're going to be watching the Bible study video first, and then we're going to dive in. So I'm going to start by sharing the screen and we can watch that video. This is on Moses and Aaron. Let's see what the Bible Project has to say about it.
Love that sweater.
Thank you. Where'd you get it? Online.
Oh, very nice.
It was on sale. Even better.
The story of the Bible begins in a garden temple with a couple, Adam and Eve, as God's royal priests.
They're supposed to partner with God to take care of creation, and this place where heaven and earth are one is filled with God's blessing.
But Adam and Eve were led astray by a deceptive creature and exiled from God's presence. Their vocation as priests is lost. And with that, all humanity descends into violence. But God promises that a new royal priest will come to lead them back into the blessing of Eden by sacrificing himself.
So later on, we meet a new couple, Abraham and Sarah. God promises that through their family, the royal priest will come to restore the Eden blessing, not just for them, but for all the nations. And so it's this family that grows to become the Israelites. And they eventually journey to Egypt and then become enslaved under the violent rule of King Pharaoh.
So God appoints a man named Moses to represent him to Pharaoh and to mediate on Israel's behalf.
Moses confronts Pharaoh and then leads Israel out of slavery and into the wilderness, where they eventually come to Mount Sinai. And here, God appears to all the Israelites, inviting them to become a kingdom of priests.
So he's inviting everyone to be priests, like Adam and Eve were priests in Eden.
Right. But it turns out the people are afraid of God, and they don't want to come close to God's presence, and so Moses goes alone up to the top of the mountain.
And up there, Moses famously gets the 10 Commandments, the first two being, worship Yahweh alone, and don't make idol statues.
And Moses sees some really amazing things up there. First, he sees God's heavenly temple, and then also a blueprint of it called the pattern.
All right, the plans for the construction of the tabernacle.
Yeah, it's designed as a symbolic model of Eden, a place where heaven and earth are one. Then Moses sees something else, the pattern of a glorious human figure.
The high priest who will work in the tabernacle.
Right, and only this priest can go in and out of the sacred space on behalf of others. He's dressed in white, he wears a crown and is glowing with jewels. He's an image of the royal priest that we're waiting for.
And yet, the man who's called to be Israel's first high priest is the brother of Moses, a man named Aaron.
And while Moses is up seeing all of this, down at the foot of the mountain, Aaron is misleading the people by making an idol statue of God.
So the soon-to-be high priest is breaking the first of the 10 Commandments.
Yes. And so God gets angry and he tells Moses that he's done with these people. He'll just start over with Moses. But Moses stands before God and he intercedes for the Israelites. He even offers his own life as a sacrifice for their sins.
And while God doesn't take Moses' life, he does forgive the people like Moses asked.
And so when Moses comes down from the mountain, he's shining. Just like the high priest that he saw in his vision. It's like he's the real priest that his brother was supposed to be, but failed.
And from here, the tabernacle is built.
And then Aaron's family is installed to the priesthood.
But really, even after this bad start?
Yeah, and actually things get even worse. God gives Aaron and his sons really precise instructions on how to act as the priests. And then on their first day on the job, Aaron's two sons violate God's commands. And because they're in a place of great privilege and responsibility, God deals severely.
They die inside the tabernacle. Things are not looking good for the priesthood of Aaron.
Right, both Aaron and his sons have failed in their priestly role, and this begins to make us think maybe God's people need a different kind of priesthood.
Maybe one that's more like Moses, who surrendered his very life over to God.
Yes, and while Moses is great, he also fails to be fully obedient to God. And so both he and Aaron die outside the land promised to Abraham.
So Moses was only an image of the kind of priest that God's people will need.
Right, we're still waiting for this ultimate royal priest who will intercede like Moses and offer his life for the failures of others.
The Israelites eventually make it into the promised land, and there they appoint a king and establish a kingdom. Perhaps now God's royal priest can arrive.
And this brings us to King David, and his story is what we're going to look at next.
Skip over.
Let's skip a whole bunch of people. Because this
We're
would
not- have
not
okay.
be just a few weeks if we were
Yeah.
going through every person.
Hmm.
So Moses and Aaron. Any thoughts, initial thoughts from our video tonight?
Why did they say that that Aaron was chosen to be the priest? Did they say?
Yeah, so Aaron was just chosen to be the priest, and
Bye.
I think he was chosen by
No.
by Moses, and there's some indication
Okay.
by God
The
too.
elders. Oh.
Yeah,
Was it his vision? Or is that just a
Was it because he was the better speaker than Moses? Is that why?
Moses asked if somebody else could. He said, "I don't want to do this. I'm
Moses-
not a good
Moses-
speaker."
Yeah.
And so Aaron was brought forward as well.
Must be a smooth tucker.
Why don't you help with this? And and so he was helping with it.
But
We
he
kind
kind
of
of screwed up.
Well, it makes you think, why did they even need priests? Because they were not doing what they were supposed to be doing.
the blind leading the blind?
But yeah, but the people wanted a figure, I think, to help.
Well, they
them
didn't
get
want
to
to-
God.
Didn't want to interact directly with God.
Right,
So
but
they needed an intercessor.
right.
Or
Yeah.
they wanted an intercessor.
But I wonder why they thought they needed.
Well, there is the piece in Exodus where God comes before the people and they're like, "We don't want to see any more God." Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
talk to God, not us. We
Right.
don't want to. It's too scary.
Because what? Because it was just too scary.
It was too just
They were too
overwhelming.
afraid of something.
Yeah. It was too much.
It's so vague. Okay. Well, it was corrupt, but I mean, there's hardly any high leadership nowadays that doesn't have some corruption, I think. Maybe it's humanity.
And it also could be how humanity records things too.
Yeah.
We know how sensational stories people pay attention to.
Hmm.
Well, Moses wasn't perfect either
Mhm.
and
No.
mixed things up. So let's start with Moses. Let's look at Moses, Exodus 3, verses 7 through 17. So this is Moses, the call of Moses. And so as we read this, listen for why is it that God called Moses?
Okay.
I mean, Moses he was a murderer. He had run away from leadership already once. He was really hiding out as an exile, as a fugitive. And here God comes to him. He's out keeping the flock of his father-in-law. And he led the flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. So let's jump ahead then to 7. And does anybody want to start reading, and then you can give up at any time and let somebody else
Give
jump
up.
in.
Which chapter do we start in? 'Cause I was
Chapter
just-
7.
3,
Oh.
Okay,
verse 7.
verse 7.
I can read until 10.
Okay.
Then Yahweh said, I have seen the affliction of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries under those who oppress them. I have felt their sufferings. Now I have come down to rescue them from the hand of Egypt, out of their place of suffering, and bring them to a place that is wide and fertile, a land flowing with milk and honey, the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the children of Israel has reached me, and I have watched how the Egyptians are oppressing them. Now go, I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?
It's on me.
And God said, I will be with you, and this will be a sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you.
God also said, tell them the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This will be my name forever, and it has always been my name, and it will be used throughout all generations.
Go assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what you have done, what they have done to you in Egypt. I promised to bring you up out of misery in Egypt into the land of Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land flowing with milk and honey.
So a priest, remembering the definition of a priest is somebody who represents God to the people and the people to God. So why does God ask Moses? Why Moses?
I think you gotta go back a chapter.
Okay, got to go back to chapter 2. So what do you, knowing what you know of Moses, why Moses?
Well, his mom hid him and then sent him down the river. And he got found by the Pharaoh's daughter, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then she raised him in the castle with the Pharaoh. So he was kind of inside.
And he did kill someone, right? Didn't he kill an
Yeah.
Egyptian or something?
He did. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his
Oh,
kinfolk. He
that's
looked
what it
this
was.
way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand.
This was in deep sand.
And the sand must have been pretty strong too.
But that's not a good reason to make.
Well, because I guess since he had been in Pharaoh's house, he kind of had a relationship. I mean, you can show up
Okay.
and say, I'm Moses,
Yeah.
and doesn't have to say, who the heck is Moses?
Yep.
They kind of know who Moses is, or that would
True.
have some memory of Moses that after, I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been a few.
So he's got some connections.
But why did God ask him? I'm actually asking. I have
Because he
no idea.
might be more representative, or
Maybe they're more likely to
To know,
to
listen to him.
listen to
That's
are
what
him.
you're
there any
saying?
other Israelites outside of Egypt that he can send in?
Oh,
If
Maybe
they
Moses-
all stayed there, I
question
don't
of
know.
numbers, maybe.
Moses
Yeah.
was the only one.
He was available.
If he was-
Well, and of that was the
You're not
reason.
busy.
Okay, the reason he was hidden was because were the boy children being killed?
Yes. at that
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Okay, so how many peers did he have?
Just girls.
Well, and Aaron
Fire.
must have been a way younger brother.
Must have been. It must not
Was
have been
he?
the same era.
No, he was older, wasn't it? Because the sister was older, because she's the one who went down the
Sister's
river.
older.
But Aaron
I thought
wasn't
our-
around yet, was he?
Might have been, or else he would have been killed.
Well, he could have been born afterwards.
Oh, it
He
could have
just
been
got
born
killed?
after.
Yeah.
after the babies, after the edict, I guess.
Because it didn't go on forever. Otherwise, they would have been out of, I mean,
Workers, yeah.
they would-
or fresh workers anyway.
yeah, they were using slave labor.
Yeah.
Which interesting fact, historically, there is not evidence of this whole event.
Mhm.
Okay.
The
Which-
level of slavery in Egypt that is described in the Bible.
There's no evidence
There's
of
not
that
historical
type of
evidence to
slavery.
back
Oh,
that up in the same way.
that they were doing to the Israelites. Oh, okay.
When you think about, like I said, sensational stories. get
Yeah, it makes it
recorded and-
more-
Yeah, I mean, it's like, do we take this as fact or do we take this as, oh, here's more stories about how humans behave throughout history?
Right. But no matter the details, I guess it's about how this person named Moses came to notoriety for us anyway today, for whatever reason.
And why were the boy babies killed that time?
Because they're becoming too numerous.
I think they were getting too big. Yeah.
There's so many,
The
you figure
Egyptians.
the Israelites were growing in
The
population.
Israelites.
And they
figured could
were
just take
they
over
were so robust, they were being born
Yeah.
even before the midwives came.
and get there.
I underlie that in my
And there's
That's how
fear
it
that
is.
the boys would become enemies then, that they would
Right.
fight.
They can
and rise
control
up.
the population.
yeah.
So they were trying to prevent
Yeah.
somebody from rising up against them.
So he was one of the like very few males of that time.
Right, which is interesting that
that age.
they killed this age group because they were afraid that somebody would rise up against them. And what does Moses do? Exactly what they're afraid
Yeah.
is going to happen. And God used just that one person to do it,
Yeah.
rising up.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Moses had, he was familiar in the realm of royalty. They knew who he was
Good
and
job.
seen him around the palace. And so sometimes I think he could have gotten in where other Hebrew people could not have.
Mhm.
Or at least gained an audience.
Right.
You gotta
Yeah.
start
People
somewhere.
would
You gotta
listen.
gain an
Yeah.
audience.
Practical matters here. And then a bush burned. Less practical.
No, it was not consumed.
This is why it was not practical. Spiritual, magical.
Well, I was trying to keep his carbon footprint.
That's what he was doing. Well, conscientious.
Hmm.
Conscient. Milk and honey.
Yeah. How does it flow with milk?
Well, my
Yeah.
Bible says they're male and female sexual fluids. That's what they stand for.
Does anybody other
Goat's milk
Bibles
and
have
dates
notes?
are ancient euphemism for male and female sexual fluids.
So they would be numerous and not be.
Yeah, the lamb was
Killed
depicted
them?
in terms of a full expression of physical love. Yes, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose this could be tied to fertility
Yeah, there were no ratings for stories back then.
because honey was date syrup, which I guess was a female sexual. It's interesting. I've never noticed that before.
It is so
My
hard.
footnotes don't have that.
Well, what were you saying?
It's so hard because we don't know the slang.
Yeah.
And like we're
Yeah.
just
Right.
assuming the
Right.
slang from, but
Yeah.
could be wrong about what the
I was
slang
thinking
is.
like, did they milk goats? Did they milk cows? Were cows were sacred?
Goats.
Did they milk camels?
Mine says goats.
Cows take a lot to raise. Goats are.
Mhm.
quite as
Goats are
expensive
easier.
to keep.
Right, and they're easy to milk and their milk is homogenized. I
This
used
is
to
why.
I used to chase our goat across
Oh,
the
did you?
pasture with an ice cream pail with a lid. My mom always said, how come when you milk her, it's always foam? Like, Mom, first, I can just barely outrun her.
Home.
Well, if we turn to Exodus 7:7, this is,
7:7.
I was wrong. Moses, it says Aaron was 3 years older. Moses was 80
You're
years
right.
old and Aaron was 83.
You got the
Yes.
ages.
Wow. So
They were pretty close in
he got
age.
They were very
by
close in age.
because he was older.
Yeah,
Mhm.
3 years earlier. So he's probably, that's pretty young though.
Mhm.
He probably didn't even have memory of it.
Mhm.
So then his sister was older than Aaron, you think?
Yeah,
Yes.
his
They
sister
was-
was older than both, the older sister of the two.
Because the sister was old enough to run along at least that's,
Yeah.
Yeah. run along and watch her baby brother.
I wonder if they
Yeah,
heard
both.
stories growing up about Moses.
I should ask your dad. Okay. Have you ever heard this dialect? My grandma, when we were naughty, she would say gay in the binza.
I don't
And we
think so.
Huh?
No, I don't think I've heard that before.
It was Plattdeutsch from southern Germany.
No, Carol's mom would know Plattdeutsch. I don't.
Okay.
Say it again.
Gay in the binza, so Gaya, go.
Yeah.
And then Debinza was probably shortened, but she said it meant the cattails. So
Oh.
go to the cattails. And so we were sitting down once saying, Grandma, why should I go to the cattails? And she said, well, if you're naughty, you'll end up in a basket or sent down the river.
Oh.
Like Moses was.
Go play in traffic, we figured.
Wow.
Well, we'll rescue you. The next Pharaoh.
So Moses is being called to this.
Mhm.
Now let's jump into, keep going forward, Exodus 19. So 19 verses 3 to 6.
Three to six.
This is Exodus chapter 19, verses 3 through 6. Then Moses went up to God. The Lord called him from the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the Israelites, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice, and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the Israelite. So this is the point where God is calling them to become this kingdom of priests, that a whole like culture of priests. So what is it that as a culture of priests that they need to do to represent God? And it's as a culture of priests, they're not just being called here, which is interesting. It's not just that they're priests to themselves, but God, indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom. And if a priest is one who is to represent God to the people, then the people are being called to be this culture of priests to the other nations and to all peoples. So what is it? How are they a culture of priests? Or what do they have to do to represent God?
You need to listen to God,
Listen to God.
keep his
Obey his
covenant.
covenants, yeah.
And so the word here, or where it says you shall obey my voice, what does yours have?
You should
This is
listen,
5.
listen to my voice.
Listen to my
and keep my
voice.
covenant.
In Hebrew, it's said twice. It's Shema, Shema. And so it's with emphasis that like, you really, really need to be listening to this. Shema, Shema.
Mm.
And remember when we talked about the Shema, Shema is the act of listening, but in the act of listening, it also carries an act of doing too. That you don't just, your listening turns into action is a part of it. So if you obey my voice, you listen to my voice, you like hear and act upon my covenant.
Mine says you will be there, my own special treasure. Is that
Mm.
Oh,
what does yours say?
treasured possession.
Mine says cherished ones.
So there's a huge responsibility here. It reminds me of like Spider-Man, when he says, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes,
And
yes.
you can screw it up.
That's a lot to put on the people.
It is a lot to put on the people. And as we saw in the video, when the first priests, that they like messed it up
Yeah.
and they were killed.
Yeah.
There wasn't room for you to just mess it up
No.
because of the responsibility that it was carrying, that they are representatives of God into the whole world. So let's go forward to 32. Exodus 38 or 28, I'm sorry, before we get to 32. Exodus 28 is where God is calling Aaron to be a priest. It's kind of buried within these are like the clothes you have to wear too
Mhm.
and everything. But the start of Exodus 28. Then bring near to you your brother Aaron and his sons with him from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. And this is God speaking to Moses. And then details from there. So then 32. Chapter 32, verses 1 through 5.
Oh, the old calf.
So Aaron's been called as a priest. They've been told what it means to be a whole culture of priests. And there's not a lot of like it's not wordy. I would want you to Shema Shema, and I want you to keep the covenants.
Yeah.
And this is what they do. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, people gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come, make gods for us, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." Aaron said to them, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it in a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel." And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, "Tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord." They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel.
Yours is plural, huh, God?
Rose up to rebel.
Rebel. Oh,
Revel,
revel.
not rebel.
Party.
Party.
They rose
Okay,
up to
got
party.
I think Aaron gets a bad rap here.
Okay.
Because, well, in my Bible, I think I must have read this before. Mine's worded like this. Aaron seems to view the calf not as a rival power or even an object of worship in itself, but as a symbol of Yahweh God. Many gods and goddesses are represented as bulls or cows. Mine says like Israel, here is your God, capital letter, who brought you up from the land. Like he was building it to represent God. For some reason,
And
mine
how
goes that
many
direction.
churches have made images to represent?
Right, but not as another god or gods as yours
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
Represent God.
Well, and some would say, and there are some sects of Christianity that would say the images that some Christians make to represent God
Mhm,
are what Aaron did.
Yeah.
And it's not right.
mhm.
Well, this also says that Elohim can be singular or plural. So
Hmm.
he would use Elohim, so that'd be God or gods. So yours says God, mine says gods, but if they use
Yeah.
Elohim, that's what
Yeah.
they're translating from.
Yeah. Yeah.
The translation probably could have, they might have changed. Yeah,
Who knows?
But then, yeah, he does say, this is the Lord. I mean, that's what Aaron said anyway. That's what the book says, but
Yeah. Here's your God who brought you up from the land of Egypt, the same God.
But then why in the next part
Mm-hmm.
does God tell Moses to go down? Because they have been quick to turn aside from the way I commanded them.
Oh, yeah.
They have cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it.
Well, God misunderstood, as
God
God does.
misunderstood.
As
No,
God
God
does.
didn't
sometimes. Okay.
There's the
So
answer.
what is yours saying?
I'm
when I
sure that's what
follow that?
Aaron said.
It doesn't have any footnotes on
Moses,
that
I
part.
think God
This
misunderstood.
is not what I meant.
I didn't mean a calf to worship. I meant like a calf as like a focus point.
Yeah, because we do.
I've heard those exact same words from somebody who was passing around an elephant as a totem to help you focus. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not real comfortable with
Oh,
this.
seriously? See, I think we do that all the time. We have
Mhm.
objects that we use as a way to pray to God.
Mhm. Holy medals.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a
Icons.
little bit
Yeah,
Catholic-y, but
geez.
yes, I don't see anything wrong.
but not usually calves.
Not usually, but now we've gotten away from
Well,
that a
there's
little
the
bit.
Lamb of God, though, and it's a lot like a little calf. I
Yeah.
don't know. What do you
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
think?
I just think it was a little extreme.
You have footnotes in your Bible that are different.
No,
What do you
it's
think?
pretty much the same of what you were saying too. I don't know.
You think Aaron gets a bad rap? Or was God right?
God was so quick to judge.
I think that Aaron was prompted by all the people, and he just they just overtook his thoughts, I think. And so he thought, well, I'll just appease them and collect all your earrings and make this golden calf here, so to keep you guys quiet, maybe.
That's probably what he was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and before this God, they were used to representing gods with calves. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't think it
Yeah.
was weird for anybody to represent this God as a calf. Okay.
But he was told, and they were told to set themselves apart.
Yeah, he just didn't know in this instance.
In what
to
way?
do- yeah, yeah, I guess.
Or
That's
was he
true.
Like, there's priests, cultured priests, to all the nations. We're the
Yeah.
only ones here in the wilderness right now. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's
Moses
a real,
has
that's a real human
disappeared.
thing to do. You
Yes,
just
it
make you
is.
like, well, I want to do it this way. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine says, all right, were you reading 32, 22?
I didn't get that far.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Find on the next page.
It says, don't get upset, sir, Aaron replied. You know yourself, these people, and what a wicked bunch they are. They said to me, make us some gods to lead us.
We don't know.
For something has happened to the man Moses who led us out of Egypt. So I told them.
Who has gold? Yeah, mine just has a God again.
He
though.
sounds like the salesman.
I like how it continues though. So I told them, whoever has gold, take it off. So they gave it to me. And I threw it into the fire.
Oh, and
out
it
came
came a
this
calf.
calf.
Yes.
Although it did say he made a mold and fashioned a calf.
He's
earlier.
trying to save him. He didn't realize that wasn't the kind of God they wanted. That God wanted. Wasn't the kind of God that God wanted.
Aaron's definitely backtracking there.
Yeah, he's trying to
He
he's
made
trying
a
to save
mold,
himself.
and then the next one,
Oh, you misunderstood.
it just
I
came out
just-
like
Now,
that.
now there's human
didn't
too.
really mean it
You don't
like
want to
that.
get in trouble
Yeah,
from Moses.
Aaron and Moses are both very human.
Yes, they are.
How
And-
long was Moses up on the mountain? It must have been quite some time.
Apparently a long time.
Yeah,
I don't know if it really
No,
says
that-
long enough. He's dead.
40 days.
That happens now, really. You can see a parallel between the people who don't go to church or be with people in a community. They forget about what they're supposed to be doing, and they just go on their happy ways,
Yeah.
And so they thought they were doing okay. They thought about what they had done before, that they were worshiping the golden calves and all other kinds of idols and so forth, and they thought, well, Moses is not coming down, so I guess we'll just go back to our own ways. We really don't remember what he had said previously. He's been
So
up
it's Moses.
long.
Or God's. God took the
God
tomato.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point,
That's
though.
probably what the people would say.
I mean, if it was like years and years, yeah, you could feel a little abandoned. I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
and he could have
And
died
think-
up there.
Well, yeah, and think maybe that wasn't real. Yeah, he could have died up there. I don't know how old he is here.
No, that's an interesting point
Yeah.
with today. It's parallel
Uh-huh.
as far as like how easily we can justify whatever it is that we do.
Yeah,
And if we're called out on it, how easily we can justify it again and backtrack, even if there was a record of, this is what happened. This is what I really meant.
when you're away from a sense of God in some fashion in your life, yeah, or a sense of. Huh. Sometimes it happens 20 minutes after you leave church. What happened there? Who knows? Yeah.
Right, yeah, you could get into an argument like 15 minutes after you leave church and you totally forgot what you were, that you
The
were
sermon
peaceful and kind and loving, it's gone.
Yeah.
Habits run really deep. And it speaks to the struggles of that, of how do
Yeah.
you change an entire culture?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
it didn't
true.
happen overnight. It didn't even happen in one generation.
No.
It didn't even happen in 50 generations. That
No.
it's been slow changes all throughout time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're sliding the other way.
Mhm.
So let's jump at just a little bit. 32, chapter or verse 30. So listen to how does Moses act as a priest to the people. So this is Exodus chapter 32, verses 30 through 32. On the next day, Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin, but now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Alas, this people have sinned a great sin. They have made for themselves gods of gold. But now, if you only forgive their sin, but if not, blot me out of the book that you have written." How does Moses act as a priest?
He's
Yeah.
making atonement.
And we're sacrificing himself.
Makes atonement, sacrifices himself. What's one thing he does that Aaron does not do?
Admits it or something.
He admits it.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
Asks
also,
for forgiveness.
he asks for forgiveness. He also takes responsibility,
Hmm.
which Aaron does not do at all.
No, he doesn't.
Aaron says, "I don't know how it happened. Gold calf just came out."
Yeah.
But Moses, who wasn't even there, goes before God and says, "If you won't forgive them, blot me out of the book that you have written. Like, I'll take responsibility for this. These are the people that I am the representative to."
He asked for to give their sins,
Mhm.
but he says, whoever has sinned against me, I'll blot out.
God says.
That's
Yeah,
what God says.
yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
puts a plague on him.
And then he says, I will punish them for their sin. And at the end of that paragraph,
Yep.
which he does, I guess, because they don't get out of the.
Yeah.
Well, the very
They
verse
don't get a-
35. Did yours say
35.
plague or
Then the
something?
Lord sent a plague on the people because they made the calf, the one that Aaron made.
Oh
The
my-
scriptures really hammer this home.
With
Aaron
the
did
calf
it.
that Aaron had.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So even though Moses is acting as a priest, takes responsibility for it, that doesn't remove the consequences of our actions.
What if you say 10 Hail Marys? No, just kidding. Something about that reminded me of confession. when
Yeah.
You said it.
It seems in this,
You're confessing to a priest who sort of takes responsibility and then you atone.
it seems
Huh.
that the responsibilities are
Yes,
The
You
The
still
consequences
get
are
the
not a priest.
right, right. To
The
give,
priest is not to carry the
Yeah.
the consequences,
it does seem like
but the
that here.
consequences still occur.
Yeah.
So we did not get to David. But we kind of look through Aaron and Moses. Any reflections? Last thoughts on Aaron and Moses?
God forgave them.
That's a good thing to end on,
Yeah.
besides the
forgive
plague.
them. What in there?
Well, they didn't get into the land of milk and honey. And
But
they
the
probably-
people did.
the people-
The people did, yes,
the-
they
The
did.
people that, except for Jacob and everybody else died and.
The
Well,
whole generation
yeah.
passed.
That's right.
So these promises are not just for the current generation, but those to come.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because some of the consequences are still lingering.
Possibly.
Passed on
It's how
for
long.
generations on to other 7 generations.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Hannah.